Hello, folks. It's time for another informative episode of Dimensions in the Geopolitical Economy on Almogate Radio Communications. I'm glad to host you and welcome everyone. It is without a doubt that here we give you the best analysis and projections of the goings on, the dimensions in the geopolitical economy, and without putting my thumb on the scale. No, we try to say it as it is, present the facts as they are, and when we opinionate, it is as objectively as possible. We try to be seen as not having any dog in the race or fight, so that our listeners, our audience, our clients can make informed cross-border decisions that will positively impact their undertakings, their endeavors, their businesses, functions, their collaborative efforts, their partnerships across the board. And that's what we are known for here at Amogate. That is what we are characterized by. That is our identity, because it is something that is engraved in our vision, that enabling transformational leadership across the world is a task that must be done. We create that impact so that people are able to reach their goals optimally. And as we continue to seek and share knowledge that's the impacts that's relevant for growth and development across the board, we continue to encourage you to engage with us, to give us your feedback, on all our programs, so that we can inculcate same to continue to personalize our products, personalize our service, and tailor them for your needs. So last time out, we took a deep dive into how the current United States President Donald Trump has been altering the geopolitical landscape wholesomely and rapidly. Elections have consequences, and during the campaign period, I recall doing the analysis then between the Harris Walz ticket and the Trump Vance ticket, and the implications of either ticket prevailing. And we should understand that most of the things happening now should not be surprised. So things that are expected, especially the activities of the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by the world's richest man, Elon Musk. Okay, and I want to look at Trump as been seen from some kind of a prism as a consequence of the collapse of global leadership. Okay, because you look at the rise of populist nationalism, and you see that it negates all what globalists stand for. All right, so Trump can be seen as a consequence of global leadership collapse, and we will have to deal with the consequences, because he is here to alter so many things. In the next 4 years, he's going to impact global culture. Is going to impact the geopolitical economy, and if he's able to bequeath a successor, I believe that his legacy might really endure, and the changes that he will be able to make might really get difficult to be eroded. But if a Democrat or a left-leaning politician succeeds Mr. Trump, it's possible that most of these changes are reversed, are rolled back, and we go towards a more liberal world. All right. So, like I said, the activities of the Department of Government Efficiency, though, is not surprising, at least to us. Well explained on the campaign trail, and even Elon Musk joined Donald Trump on the campaign trail and bragged about being able to cut $2 trillion, $2 trillion in spending and you reckon that the United States debt is over $36 trillion and counting. All right, so and we talked about the USAID. We focused on the USAID, its activities, the changes the organization is undergoing, the effects of these changes, and so on. And I actually concocted the USAID as a geopolitical tool. I connoted rather the USAID as a geopolitical tool, like some sort of soft power agency meant to protect, promote, and advance U.S. interests, by distributing billions of dollars yearly around the world for humanitarian purposes. So the USAID as an agency under the State Department, of course, needs to take policy direction from the U.S. Secretary of State and, of course, the National Security Council, and by extension the White House, and as against just standing as a global charity without U.S. influence. Okay, and understand that it's all about the U.S. taxpayer money. Okay, so what's the national interest? How paramount is the national interest? When national interests clash with the global interests, which should prevail? Which interest should the USAID as an agent, as an agency, okay, of the State Department that is being funded by taxpayer money? Which interests should the USAID protect, promote, and advance? Okay, so reports of non-cooperation with embassies and missions around the world, and undermining the work of the State Departments, to the extent of supporting programs that undermine host governments that are in alliance with the State Department, host governments that the State Department trying to ensure that they have healthy relationships. Host governments that have healthy relationships with the U.S. State Department. You have the USAID supporting programs undermining such governments, working at cross purposes with our State Department. All right, so talking about an hijack of the objectives of the USAID, the direction of the USAID, which is now being thought of a global entity and not working for the US. And we'll be talking about funneling borrowed billions abroad, despite domestic issues that the United States is facing, talking about diminished infrastructure, housing issues, and the drug, the borders, and so on and so forth. Even the outdated military infrastructure, it's something that's going to be a conversation for another day. I talked about that quite frankly. I think last year when I talked about the development of hypersonic missiles, that Russia is ready when it comes to hypersonic missiles, but at that time, the United States was still at the testing stage, and it actually needs an overhaul of its system to really modernize its systems, and they're really lagging behind in the technological arms race. Okay, not discounting the fact that in the Arctic Circle, Russia is the only superpower, with their nuclear icebreaker and exploiting the resources of the Arctic Circle. So, with all those challenges, you have the USAID, funneling billions abroad. That might not be in the national interests of the United States, interest of the United States citizen. So you're talking about $40 billion in foreign aid, and the State Department finding the agency non-cooperative, refusing to answer questions, and still even pushing payments, even when they executive order freezing payments had been signed. All right, so that was the need on the side of the White House to review all the activities of the USAID and continue only those that are in the the United States national interest, the interest of the national interest of the United States. Okay, and of course, ensuring that foreign aid it's aligned with U.S. United States, the interest of the United States. Okay, because activities are done against the statute and will not be sustainable. So, in making the changes, Donald Trump made the United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the acting administrator of USAID, right, and so as to be able to implement those changes with assurances that the United States will still be the most generous nation on earth, but in a way that protects, promotes, and advances the national interests of the United States, making America safer, making America more prosperous. That the USAID not just posing as a global charity, but engaging it in what makes sense in the context of foreign policy. Okay. So the unacceptability of the USAID as constituted as refusing to provide access, information, and some sort of insubordination. Okay, even refusing access to Congress is what has actually. These are the things that have facilitated those changes by Donald Trump. I mean, motivated him to bring those changes by bringing in the Secretary of State himself to oversee the agency and unleashing Doge, that's Elon Musk and his wizards on the agency, beaming the searchlights on the agency's spending. Though there have been concerns of China taking over those spheres of influence that the United States is sort of jettisoning, abandoning. But according to the American First policy, that as long as U.S. national interests are protected, promoted, and advanced, it doesn't matter what China does. That it makes no sense being involved with things that undermine America, just for the sake of competing with China. That's U.S. the national interest of the United States must supersede, must be paramount, must be prioritized over every other consideration. So the dismantling of the USAID, is it positive or is it dangerous? So which side of the divide are you? From which prism are you looking at this scenario? What are the factors that account for your position? Does the arguments of the left-wing politicians and activists and citizens and people that the dismantling of the USAID undermines positivity and undermines humanitarian activity in the world? Of course, we understand the consequences. As last year, more than 40% of the United Nations humanitarian budget was funded by the United States, being the largest global donor globally. All right, and you see that the freeze now, we just waiver exempting life-saving humanitarian assistance and of course military aid to Israel and Egypt. Talking about the impact on health, education, security across the globe, the impact on disease surveillance, as it were, halting the monitoring of Ebola in Uganda, monitoring of avian flu in about 47 countries around the world, and they roll back in the fight against the scourge of HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis and all that. Is not lost on us. Okay, and even the current famine in parts of Sudan, the aggravation of that situation All right, and you look at the issues in Myanmar, and the cutting off of aid to most vulnerable places in the world. All right, I look at people who have been, vulnerable groups escaping violence, living in their circumstances. People who are displaced in need of food assistance, and who have no other options, and at the mercy of disease outbreak, and deaths, and so on and so on. These consequences are there. All right, but the United States. The policy being implemented by the White House is putting America's interests first, and those considerations are secondary. And so the left wing argument that these are the effects of dismantling the USAID. And these are facts. But these facts tell the whole story. What's the other side of the coin? Are these the only spending that USAID is involved in? Okay, are there other spendings that are controversial, that point to a global agenda, to a cultural agenda, to some sort of non-transparent accounting at times, because some spendings could be questionable, and these are things that I want us to also look at today. Okay, so in looking at those spendings, we want to look at the rationale behind those spendings in the context of the geopolitical struggle between developed entities, between first world countries, so to speak, and developmental states, between imperial states and states that are working to roll back the effects of imperialism. The USAID spent $20 million on a Sesame Street show in Iraq. Okay, so how do you justify that? In the context of the U.S. national interests. Okay, $56 million to boost tourism in Tunisia and Egypt. All right, so you recall that I tried to connote the USAID as a soft power agency that actually tries to protect, promote, and advance the interest of the United States by distributing billions of dollars yearly around the world for humanitarian purposes. When last year, some episodes when I was talking about imperialism and anti-imperialism, and how the forces of anti-imperialism are sort of prevailing, and I gave evidences from the Russia-Ukraine conflict to the South China Sea to proliferation of satellites, and the rise of BRICS and acceptance and BRICS and so on and so forth. I gave those examples as evidences of anti-imperialism are prevailing. Okay, and I mentioned that United States White House nationalism, that having the nationalists in the United States, or having someone pursuing nationalist interests in the Oval Office, behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office of the United States White House, is a big factor that will aid anti-imperialism. All right, because it's all about opportunity costs, and when you want to use funds to promote America First interests, it means you are undermining other spendings that will actually promote imperial interests abroad of the United States. Okay, so I actually give that scenario that it's a period that developmental states should seize and try to advance anti-imperial strategies and try to implement until the imperial agenda. So, since you have someone in the White House who is pursuing United States nationalist interests. So the level of intervention, the level of prognosing, as it were, is reduced. Okay, not totally eliminated, but it's substantially reduced. And it's something that is evidenced by the dismantling of the USAID and freezing spending, a few exemptions, freezing spending for 90 days with exemptions in military aid to Egypt and Israel, and of course emergency humanitarian assistance, which of course is ambiguous and subject to the interpretation of the acting administrator, Senator Marco Rubio, or Secretary Marco Rubio. So we also talk about $11 million to tell Vietnam to stop burning trash. Right. So this environmental climate change agenda supported by globalists, which of course Mr. Trump is not in line with, as exemplified as evidenced by his second time withdrawal from the Paris climate agreement. Okay. And $2 million to strengthen trans-led organizations to deliver gender-affirming healthcare. Okay, and of course, those cultural issues were at the fore during the campaign, and the ad by the Trump campaign that was very well aired in swing states and battleground states, stating that Trump is for you while Kamala is for they, them, referring to the pronouns used by transgender people. Okay, and that's actually show from data from polling that moved the needle by about 3 points. Okay, that was the singular most impactful ad during the campaign. So cultural issues were at the fore during the campaign, and Americans voted for conservatism to prevail culturally at the time. So it's not a surprise that is being expunged. And of course, you have to understand that if it were the Harris Walls ticket that prevailed, that will not be expunged, as you can just point to the activities of Tim Walz, even in Minnesota as a governor, providing havens for trans kids. Okay, trans kids that want to defy their parents and receive gender affirming care. Okay, and Minnesota is a safe haven for them, and you find that tampons are being put in boys' bathrooms in schools in Minnesota. Right, so that goes to show that elections have consequences, and the consequences of having Mr. Trump elected is the dismantling of the soft power agency, USAID. Okay, so $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma, $520 million for consultant-driven ESG investments in Africa, $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, right? $70,000 for a DEI musical in Ireland. All right, I don't have issues with DEI that is based on merit, okay? But if it comes to subjugating merit in order to advance DEI objectives. I think it could be counterproductive. I mean, a picture comes to mind, a scene comes to mind. I recall during the attempted assassination on President Trump during the campaign in Butler, Pennsylvania, by Thomas Cook then. And I recall that some of his Secret Service agents were female, and one of them was particularly struggling. I mean, with holstering her pistol, under pressure. She was struggling to holster that pistol. I mean, for me, that's a sign of incompetence, because you have to be stable under pressure and be able to do that under pressure. And even people are even looking up to you to offer protection. All right, I'm not saying she's not being able to do that because she's a female, but I mean, merit, competence, the standards should be maintained. And DEI should be a secondary consideration. Okay, that qualified people, should be included. All right, that is no matter their race, no matter their color, no matter their leanings or affiliations. But if you say it doesn't matter, even if they are not competent, that you just have to have a representation for representation's sake, I don't think that is positive. I think that can be counterproductive, and those are the things that the Trump administration is actually working against. Right? In fact, we call it an advert by the firefighters in America that talking about one having someone that looks like you to rescue you. All right, and that's an advertisement promoting DEI values. But for me, when it comes to a fire situation, it doesn't matter who comes to save me as long as I'm saved. It doesn't matter even if the person is black or white or Asian or Caucasian or Latino, as long as the person has the skills, the bravery, the ability to save me. And that for me, it's what really matters. Okay, and of course, these are issues that are very dear to the lefts across the globe. Okay, and for the $7,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, $6.7 million to protect biodiversity from wildlife crimes in southern Africa. Okay, that's another agenda, globalist agenda, and really supported by left-wing politicians. Recall that even the California governor prioritized the protection of biodiversity and was not allowing water being channeled from the ocean to be able for California to have in their reserves and be able to combat wildfires. Okay, so it's a priority for globalists, a priority for left-wing people across the globe, biodiversity. All right, so. And talked about $44.8 million for food or economic assistance for Venezuelan migrants in Colombia. Okay, and $30 million for multi-sectoral response in Gaza. $439,000 for a local works consultant in Syria. All this to ensure influence, all this to create influence. Okay, those spendings are to ensure that the imperial agenda is advanced. Then $7.4 million to enhance efficient, inclusive, and accountable governance in northeast Syria. Okay, and $4.5 million to build societal resilience in the face of disinformation in Kazakhstan. I mean, that kind of spending, what does it entail? Maybe it entails giving money to activists, to writers. Resilience might even mean sponsoring of protests. Yes, media campaigns, social media bots, operations, and so on. $1.3 million for a supportive environment for LGBTQ people in North Macedonia, $1.9 million to strengthen human rights for LGBTQ people in the Western Balkans, and $2 million to strengthen trans-led groups delivering gender-affirming care in Guatemala. $33 million for a program called Being LGBTQ in the Caribbean, and $18,793 for technical assistance for the LGBTQ community in the 2021 Honduras election. And that might even amount to election interference, right? You know, the cultural agenda is at the fore of the globalist left-wing prized activities. No, they are the fore of promoting LGBTQ rights. Recall that President Obama actually sanctioned the Nigerian government then under President Jonathan when the anti-gay law was passed and signed by the President Jonathan then. In fact, not a few people believe that was the reason that President Obama interfered in Nigeria's elections, and by even seconding David Axelrod, who was a campaign advisor to the Obama campaign then, to the All Progressive Congress to facilitate the election of President Muhammadu Buhari. And of course, we also look at some spendings in Georgia too. $24 million for green transportation and logistics program in Georgia, $29 million for agricultural trade diversification in Georgia, and $3.5 million to help the next generations of Georgians to be civically engaged. All right, and when you see that Georgia itself is plagued by protests, especially when it tried to mitigate foreign interference by ensuring that the Foreign Agent Registration Act was passed and signed, mandating NGOs receiving more than 20% of funding from foreign entities to report and states those interests are representing foreign entities. Okay, and they recall that Anthony Blinken threatened sanctions against Georgia for passing a law that the United States itself has a replica. Okay, and recall that organizations are meant to disclose if they receive more than a certain percentage, 20 or 25, not certain now, of their funding from foreign sources in the United States, and they are expected to register as foreign agents. Okay, so that is for me hypocrisy of a very high degree, and understand that the president of Georgia herself is Western aligned. Okay, although the president is a ceremonial head of state and is the prime minister who is the head of government, because Georgia actually practices a parliamentary representative democratic republic. They operate a multi-party system. Right, so the prime minister Irakli Kupakizde is in favor of implementing the Foreign Agent Registration Act as against the president's Salome Zurabishvili, who is more disposed to actually repealing the law. Alright, so now on this note, we are going to draw the curtains on today's episode. And please do remember that at Armor Gates, we are always ready. to help and support your organizations to work optimally, creating frameworks and processes for optimization of resources and attainment of goals. You can contact us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Armorgate. You can also visit our website at www.thearmorgate.org. Our email is contact@thearmorgate.org. I hope that the time we spent together has been impactful. And I can assure you that from my end, it's been a pleasure being your host. Until I come up on your devices again, it's bye for now, and God bless. Thank you.